Hello and welcome. You're watching the short video created by the Office of Professional Preparation Services that details the timelines and features related to the next EPI performance score, the 2016 EPI performance score. My name is Phil Chase and I'm the supervisor for the Professional Accountability Unit here.
And I'm Jim Gullen. I serve as the Higher Education Data Reporting Consultant. Some of you may know me from work on this year's Title II data collection. For the 2016 EPI performance score, I will be your point person for that project.
Now at the end of the video we're going to show some contact information for all of us here in this unit, so you can contact us at your leisure. But for right now, just know that for anything that's related to the EPI performance score, Jim here is your guy. In just a few moments we'll show you a timeline graphic that will show you the key dates for the overall and component score calculation and data transfer. But first, Jim and I thought we might take a few moments to give you a little bit of a background. This might be good for people who are new to the EPI performance score or who just like a refresher. First of all, EPIs. An EPI stands for the Educator Preparation Institution, or in other words, Michigan's colleges and universities that prepare teachers. The Federal Higher Education Act, or HEA law, that's a law that requires states to provide an annual performance label for the purposes of evaluation.
Michigan has 3 labels that it grants to its EPIs each year: satisfactory, at risk of low performing, and low performing. When the score is calculated, it is compared to a cut score or passing score in order to determine whether the preparation programs at the EPI are performing satisfactorily. For Michigan's EPIs, calculation of the score comes from 3 component scores: the best attempt passing percentages on the content area Michigan tests for teacher certification, or MTTCs, the efficacy rates from the aggregated teacher candidate and candidate supervisor surveys, and point attributions made to the educator effectiveness labels for teachers who are prepared by the EPI and are within their first 3 years of experience. We know that this is already a lot of information for you on this short video, so at this point we will say that if you'd like to know more about how the data is collected and how it is calculated into a score, please refer to the technical manual from last year. You can find that technical manual on the OPPS website at www.michigan.gov/teachercert. That's teacher cert, all is one word.
We will be updating this year's technical manual, but the first update I think I have for you is that there are no major changes from last year heading into this year. We are piloting a few changes for the administration of this fall's and next spring surveys, but those are surveys whose data contribute to the 2017 score and therefore don't affect the 2016 score. At any rate, you can access the 2015 technical manual in the meantime to get an idea of the details of how we calculate the annual score.
We can also say that for each of the last 2 years, the MDE convened a group of people from our EPIs and our K-12 school districts to help us set those cut scores that we mentioned earlier. This year, that group will not reconvene and the cut score will stay the same at 84.5. The fact that we haven't made a change by this cut score panel or to the cut score means that once you have all your data from this fall, you will be able to compute your own EPI performance score and compare it to the cut score yourself. One further update we can tell you is about the overall score reports. Here's a sample of the report from last year just as a reminder. We won't be changing the design of the first page, but as you may already be aware, the MDE has piloted 2 new surveys over the last year: the Year Out Survey and the Cooperating Teachers Survey. The data from these 2 surveys will not be incorporated into the 2016 performance score. Since the federal government has not yet released its proposed new guidance on the HEA law, and since the cut score is the same as last year, the MDE did not see a need to change the current methodology in evaluating programs. However, this data is helpful and valuable to EPIs as they review the various sources of information that former graduates and teachers who've worked with their teacher candidates are saying. For this reason, the MDE is planning to include an extra page to the overall reports this year that will display 2 years' worth of year-out survey data and last year's cooperating teacher survey data for each individual EPI. Each of these data points will also have mean, minimum, and maximum scores like the other component scores. We are also contemplating an efficient way to include qualitative data from the year-out score, since we know that is valuable to you. It's a little too early to show you what these data points might look like as a visual, but we thought you should be aware that we are working on these issues and are working to report these new survey results. Phil, I bet our friends would like an overview of the timeline now.
Jim, you're absolutely correct. But we have one last note before we launch into it. We thought we'd take a minute here to remind folks that something that's the same from last year to this year is our corrective action system. Now, for those folks who are new to our college universities or who wouldn't mind a refresher, that corrective action system is our 6-phase or progressive action system that we have a diagram. That diagram, by the way, is available up on the website, but for right now, it looks like this. The reason we're mentioning it here is because we told you about the cut score and how you can predict your overall score, since nothing is changing about the calculation method. The way that our corrective action system works is that if an EPI does not meet the cut score, it falls one phase more into corrective action from 0 to 6. More accurately, phases 0 and 1 are considered satisfactory. Phases 2 and 3 are considered at risk, and phases 4 through 6 are considered low performing. If an EPI meets the cut score, its phase number is lowered by 1, stepping it closer to satisfactory. Now note that if an EPI misses the cut score by 1 year, it doesn't mean that it launches right into one of the corrective action labels. If you start at satisfactory, it would take you 2 years to become at risk. Also, if you make the cut score but you've previously been in a corrective action, it would take you multiple years of sustained improvements to be able to get back to a higher label. Okay, enough about this. Let's take a look at that timeline graphic so you know what data is coming at you when. As always, that timeline graphic is going to be available for download from the OPPS website. The first thing we'd like to bring to your attention is the central line in dark red. This is the timeline for the overall score calculation, reports generation, and presentation to the State Board of Education. Around mid-December, we begin to compile the final component score reports and the MTTC data. And just after the holidays, we use the overall calculation method to compute the overall score. And we're sure to leave time for our calculations to be independently checked and verified by other MD staff. During this time, we work with our composition team. The composition team takes the data and flows it directly into reports. The next down on the timeline is to project the corrective action status. This is where we take all of our final scores and compare that to the cut score of 84.5. We report this information to the State Board of Education as well. This year, we anticipate presenting the reports and the updated technical manual, as well as the changes in corrective action, to the State Board of Education during the April 12 meeting. About a week before, we will send out their final reports to the EPIs.
Notice that there are some activities that occur on the front of that timeline. These will occur still this fall. I'd like to walk through a few of these data points because Dana and I work with the EPIs to ensure that the data we have is as accurate as possible before we calculate the overall performance score. The line in dark blue shows the educator effectiveness data, which will be going to the EPIs around the end of this month. EPIs have 3 weeks to review this data and to make suggested edits on which records to include and which may be in error. We will be using our reason code system again this year to let EPIs know what their final counts are for educator labels and why these data were included or excluded from the final counts. After the reports are finalized, we attribute a point value to each label. This video won't go into the fine details of this, but again, the EPI Performance Score Technical Manual from last year will explain what the point values are and how they are weighted between the 3 years of experience. When this is done, the final reports are issued to the EPIs. This year, we are aiming at early December for this submission to you. The overall reports have a bar that represents the educator effectiveness data, abbreviated EFF.
Jim, I'll take the MTTC section since that's the easiest one. I say it's the easiest because for the EPI performance score, the MDE does not produce any kind of special component score report, since reports on MTTC passing percentages are readily available on the Results Analyzer tool from Evaluation Services. This is why you don't see the timeline dots on the MTTC line and why the line in orange is dotted. We will have Steve Stedging's contact information at the end of the video, but he's your guy for anything MTTC related. For right now, just know that we use 3 years worth of best attempt passing percentages for the MTTCs, and that's the data that flows into your overall scores. We do not use data from programs that have closed.
Finally, let's take a look at the survey timelines. These are represented on the graphic in green. Notice that there's a solid line for the survey data that flows into the overall score. We closed the window for review of the redacted raw data on October 5th for the spring-summer 2015 data. That, by the way, is what we mean by an appeals window. It's also a time for you to work with us to make sure that the candidates and supervisors on the rosters are really the candidates and supervisors that should be attributed to your EPI. We are using Dana's color coding system again this year for clear indicators of the survey data records that will be included and excluded from the final component reports. As always, please contact her if you have any questions on the individual files. We'll be sure to include her contact information at the end of the video too. In mid-November, we will be producing and distributing the survey reports. These reports will include data from the Fall-Winter 2014 Survey Administration, as well as the Spring-Summer 2015 Survey Administration. Both these administrations will provide data for the overall component score. At the bottom of the diagram, we also have the survey collection windows, as well as the appeals windows for the two sets of surveys that will contribute to the 2017 EPI score. Even though these surveys pertain to next year's score, you and your faculty will want to know about them now in order to get ready for them. Our Fall-Winter 2015 survey window opens on November 16 for teacher candidates, candidate supervisors, and coordinating teachers, and concludes at the end of January. We will be running our appeals window for that data between February 15th and March 4th of next year. Later that year, the Spring-Summer 2016 surveys open for teacher candidates, candidate supervisors, and coordinating teachers on March 11th and close June 30th. During this time frame, we will also conduct the third installment of the year-out surveys. For the Spring-Summer 2016 surveys, an appeals window will open later that summer, but it is not depicted on this timeline.
And that's the timeline. Thanks, Jim. As always, we'll take any questions you have about the EPI performance score. Remember, Jim's your contact person, but also we'll have a webinar a little later on this fall to handle questions and answers. Also, a little later this fall, the MDE will have information and steps for the access of what we call the extranet system. Now, our goal for this system is to facilitate secure data transfer between ourselves and the EPIs. We hope that this system will facilitate secure transfer of information between ourselves and EPIs, but not just for the EPI performance score. Also, we'd like to use it for accreditation, corrective action, and a number of other uses we have here in the office. We plan to grant each EPI access to its own private directory, just for their EPI. But also, each one will have access to shared folders for announcements or updates. The extranet is an extension of the Microsoft SharePoint system that we use here at the MDE. As such, it will help if your EPI uses a Microsoft account for its computer users, for example, if you're on Office 360. If not, no worries, the extranet can be set up for any system, but it may require a designated staff or faculty member to create a Microsoft account, which is free. We'll be sure to include all of this in our instructions for the system. For this reason, we are still setting up and testing the system, and we're asking for volunteers from our EPIs. We'd like a contact person to give us a name and an email so that we can help make sure that they're getting they can get on the extranet system correctly and they can get the data transferred to them correctly. So if you can help, please use the contact information to contact Jim or I at the end of this video, and we'd love to have your help. With this, we conclude the 2016 EPI Performance Score video. We thank you for watching. Now, look for information about that Q&A webinar, but of course, if you have a question before then, don't hesitate to contact Jim or I about it.
Like Phil said, thanks for watching, and we do hope that you will join us for our question and answer webinar. Before we leave you, here's that contact information that we mentioned earlier on.